Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're really digging into something quite unusual in recent Middle East diplomacy. We're looking at former President Trump's tour, specifically Day 2.
Yeah, day two is packed. You had the first ever official U.S. presidential state visit to Qatar.
Right, and that meeting with Syria's new leader, which was, well, highly unexpected to say the least.
Definitely unexpected. We've got a report here covering the main takeaways from that day.
And our mission for you listening is to pull out the really important insights and try to understand the actual weight of these diplomatic moves and the economic ones too.
And what jumps out right away is just how unprecedented it all felt. A U.S. president meeting the leader of Syria, first time in almost 25 years.
A quarter century.
And then that formal state visit to Qatar. It really points towards maybe a significant shift, or at least a recalibration in U.S. foreign policy in, very complex region.
Absolutely. Let's start with that Syria meeting because it feels almost surreal, doesn't it? Especially considering the immediate background.
It really does.
The report reminds us not long ago the U.S. actually had a $10 million bounty out for Ahmed al-Sharaa.
That's right, a $10 million reward.
And his former group, HTS, Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, it's still officially listed by the U.S. as a foreign terrorist organization.
Still on the list. Because of those past links to al-Qaeda, you see.
So, yeah, surreal is the word.
It just highlights what a huge change this was. You had the overthrow of Bashar al-Assad's government.
By that HTS-led coalition.
Exactly. And al-Assad fleeing to Russia. It created this entirely new situation on the ground. So this meeting, it wasn't just, shaking hands. It really signals a kind of fundamental rethink by the U.S. about its interests, maybe its potential partners, given this new reality.
And a big part of that rethink, it seems, was lifting sanctions. Sanctions against Syria that were in place under Assad.
Correct. That happened just before the meeting was announced.
And the report says the Syrian government reacted positively to that, seeing it as a potential economic boost.
Well, yes. Beyond just showing a willingness to talk, lifting sanctions could be seen as maybe a pragmatic acceptance of who's now in charge in Damascus. It might also be a move to sort of counterbalance other players in the region who had ties with Syria.
And then you had that trilateral meeting later with Saudi Arabia's crown prince and the call with Turkey's President Erdogan. It puts it in a wider regional picture.
Precisely. Wasn't happening in a vacuum.
Okay, so what about the meeting itself? The White House readout had some interesting points.
It did.
Trump apparently encouraged al-Sharaa to, quote, do something historic, which included, according to the readout, urging Syria to kick out foreign terrorists and Palestinian terrorists, and even suggesting normalizing ties with Israel. That's quite a list.
That's a very ambitious agenda, but it does fit with, long-term U.S. goals in the Middle East. Counterterrorism, normalization with Israel. These are familiar themes.
And al-Sharaa, what was his response, reportedly?
Well, the readout said he expressed shared interests with the U.S. in countering terrorism and eliminating chemical weapons. So some potential common ground there on security.
And he asked for U.S. investment.
Yes, specifically in Syria's petroleum sector, which points towards wanting economic engagement, obviously.
And Trump's personal read on al-Sharaa, the quote is something else.
Ah, yes, the quote.
Great. I think very good. Young, attractive guy, tough guy, strong past, very strong past, fighter. He's got a real shot at pulling it together.
It's very Trump, isn't it? Very direct, very personal.
A unique style of diplomatic assessment, let's say.
It is. Very unconventional. Whether that kind of personal take translates into actual long-term policy, well, that's always the question. But it certainly adds a distinct flavor to the whole thing.
Okay, let's shift gears. The state visit to Qatar. First official one ever by a U.S. president.
That's right. Historic in its own right.
And the report describes quite a scene. Pomp and circumstance, 15 fighter escorts, red carpet.
Horses, camels, the works.
The emir, Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani, personally welcoming him. Sounds lavish.
Well, these state visits, the ceremony, it's not just for show, It's about respect. It's about solidifying ties. And as the report notes, those visuals often play well back home, too. Projects an image of, successful global engagement.
The emir himself really stressed the historic nature of it, saying Qatar was honored and excited.
Sets a positive tone.
And apparently Trump was impressed by the Emiri Diwan, the emir's office. Something about the marble being perfect-o.
Ah, yes. Perfecto. Those little details, sometimes they tell you something about the initial mood, right? A good atmosphere can definitely help when you get down to business.
And they certainly got down to business. Huge deals announced.
Huge is right. The report mentions deals worth at least $1.2 trillion overall.
Wow. And the big headline grabber was Qatar Airways buying planes from Boeing. A lot of planes.
210 aircraft, yeah. That's a massive order.
Now, there was some initial confusion on the value, wasn't there? Trump mentioned $200 billion at one point.
He did, yeah. That figure seemed a bit high. The report clarifies the Boeing deal itself was valued around $96 billion.
Still, $96 billion is enormous.
Absolutely enormous. As Trump apparently said, it's the largest order of jets in the history of Boeing. That's pretty good.
Pretty good. Understatement, maybe.
Just a bit, perhaps. These deals, they have big economic impacts for both sides, obviously. Jobs, revenue.
And they strengthen the strategic relationship, too.
Definitely.
Trump also mentioned he and the emir went way back, friends for a long time, long before politics.
That personal connection theme again seems important to his way of operating.
And it wasn't just Boeing, right? Other deals, too.
Yeah, the report mentions Qatar buying drone and anti-drone tech from U.S. defense companies like Raytheon.
Yeah.
And also Qatari investments into the U.S. energy sector. So it was broad, a real deepening of economic ties.
And the emir thanked Trump, said they were taking the relationship to another level.
Which suggests, both sides saw this as a significant step forward. Building that economic interdependence often creates a solid base for longer-term diplomatic alignment.
Okay, so Syria meeting, big Qatar deals. But there was also talk about Iran during this trip, wasn't there?
Yes, Iran was definitely on the agenda. Negotiations were ongoing, remember, about Iran's nuclear program.
And Trump's message?
Pretty clear. He insisted Iran must not get nuclear weapons. That was the bottom line.
He apparently brought it up at the state dinner in Qatar, put some pressure on Iran to finalize the talks.
Yeah, the quote was something like, they have to get moving, direct pressure.
But the report also notes his tone was maybe a bit mixed. He said he wanted to see Iran thrive, do well, be successful, be happy. Mentioned Iranian people in the U.S.
Yeah, there was that element too. Sort of holding out an olive branch, perhaps.
Yeah.
Or trying to appeal to the Iranian people.
Yeah.
But underneath that, there was still the warning. He hinted things could get perilous, said he wanted to save maybe millions of lives, so the tension was still there.
And we have to remember, he pulled the U.S. out of the old Iran nuclear deal, the JCPOA, during his first term.
Exactly. That history hangs over everything. It shapes how everyone interprets these current talks and these kinds of statements. His past actions definitely add layers of complexity, maybe skepticism on all sides.
So even those seemingly softer words carry a lot of weight because of that history.
They do.
Now, this trip wasn't without controversy back home, was it? The report touches on some criticisms.
No, there were definitely some political headwinds. One issue was about a luxury Boeing jet.
The palace in the sky. Reports that Qatar offered this, $400 million customized jet to the U.S. Department of Defense.
That's the one. And it raised ethical questions, about the emoluments clause of the Constitution, which restricts accepting gifts from foreign governments without Congress's okay.
How did Trump respond to that?
He addressed it on social media, called the plane a gift free of charge, and insisted it was a very public and transparent transaction.
And the plan for the jet was? What? It wouldn't stay in service long.
Reports suggested it was likely headed for decommissioning relatively soon, and then maybe end up at Trump's presidential library after he left office.
Interesting. But it wasn't actually discussed in the meeting with the emir.
Apparently not. According to the report, it didn't come up in their official talks.
Still, it fueled criticism. The Democrats were planning some kind of protest banner over Mar-a-Lago.
Yeah, something like Qatar-a-Lago. Political theater. But it shows the domestic reaction.
And there was another potential conflict of interest question raised, wasn't there? About a crypto deal.
Yes, a reporter asked about a possible $2 billion cryptocurrency deal involving an investment firm from the UAE, the United Arab Emirates, and Trump's family company.
What was his response to that?
He said he didn't know anything about that specific deal, but he added that he'd become a big crypto fan since his campaign. So, sort of denied knowledge of the deal, but embraced the industry generally.
Okay, so quite a lot packed into just one day of this tour.
Absolutely. A really eventful 24 hours or so.
So just to wrap up for you listening, the key takeaways seem to be that really groundbreaking, maybe slightly jarring, meeting with Syria's new leader, Ahmed al-Sharaa.
Right, a potential major shift there. Then the huge trade and defense deals cemented with Qatar during that first ever state visit.
Billions, potentially trillions involved. Plus Trump's continued tough stance on Iran's nuclear ambitions, even with some softer rhetoric mixed in.
And all happening against that backdrop of some domestic political controversy back in the U.S.
It certainly feels like a pivotal moment, or at least a snapshot of a rapidly evolving U.S. strategy in the Middle East, engaging new players, forging massive economic links.
It definitely signals something changing,
Yeah.
a willingness to adapt to new realities, perhaps, even if those realities involve actors the U.S. previously considered adversaries.
Which brings us to a final thought for you to maybe mull over. As these relationships in the Middle East shift so quickly, normalizing ties with someone like al-Sharaa, building these huge economic interdependencies with Qatar, what might be the unforeseen ripple effects?
Yeah, what are the long-term consequences?
Yeah.
In a region that's already so complex and, frankly, volatile, these kinds of rapid realignments could lead to dynamics we haven't even considered yet.
What new pressures or opportunities might emerge? Definitely something worth keeping an eye on.
If you're interested in our videos, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with your friends. Thanks for watching.